So now going to do the ribbing for the neckline. I start at the top edge and back down to the work where it's going to be grafted. There's a little triangle here, unless you stretched the work to cover this area. So we're going to do some decreases to shape it to match. So we're going to do 77. I chose an odd number because it's going to be grafted and you're half a stitch off when you graft. So then I'm going to have half stitch extra on each side. Okay, otherwise it wouldn't be perfectly centered. I'm just a little picky about things like that. So, so it has to be odd number for the ribbing back. Okay, and we're going to do 2 of these. So I'm going to cast on the stitches. So that is 38 and 39. 38 on one bed, 39 on the other. I'm just going to do the 39 on the front bed. So that is from, I'm going to start from 39. It doesn't really matter. From 39, and then I'm going to go to 38 here. And then I'm going to put the racking handle up and pull up the stitches on the back bed in between those. And I am going to violate the needle rule here. I have the leftmost stitch on the front bed and the rightmost stitch also on the front bed because it's an even number for this ribbing. Because it's an odd number for this ribbing. I am also going to use a cast-on comb because I will be finishing off the work by using the Trico Fit. So I'm just going to have it hold the stitches. You don't have to cast it off. I just want to make sure they don't unravel by the time I get to grafting it. So I'm going to take my strippers out that I had in there. And stitch size 2. Okay, I have my yarn in and 1 row across. Okay, now I'm going to put my cast on comb in. Try not to split any of the yarns. Okay, feed the wire back through. CX, stitch size 3.5. Now, I don't bother looking over the lock to figure out the stitch size. I listen to the number of notches. So I know I had it on 2, and to get to 3.5, that's 6 notches. So I'm just going to listen for 6 notches. Okay, CX. Hold the cast on comb down a little bit. And then 2 rows, 1 row. Second row. NN, stitch size 4.5, so 4 notches. One row. Okay, that completes the cast on. And now we're going to do a few more rows. So 1 more row, and then I'm actually going to do a decrease. So I'm going to do this decrease by leaving the edge stitch as it is and taking the stitch on the back and combining it with stitch on the front. So those are going to be knit together. And I think I'm going to move this over one as well to not have such a big gap. I could put it on the back bed, but I'm not going to bother. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so we need to make sure that the needles we move the work off of are out of work. I'm going to put the edge spring back on the front. Okay, now we're going to do 2 rows. Repeat the decrease process. So I moved the second stitch from the edge onto the next stitch, and I'm moving the edge stitch over to fill that gap. Now the reason I'm not moving the edge stitch over and doing the decrease there is that when you're doing seaming, it's harder to seam through the decrease stitches than it is to do just a single stitch. Okay, same thing on the other side. Okay, move the stitch over to fill the gap. Okay, now I am in 1-to-1 needle formation again, and I am going to do 2 more rows. Okay. So that was 5 rows after completing the cast on. And I'm going to end with the lock on the left. I am going to leave about 3 times the width of the work and just a little bit extra for good luck, and cut the yarn after that. So this is going to give us enough to do the grafting to the piece. And I'm going to go ahead and re-secure the yarn. Okay, now I'm going to leave this tail on the left of the work. Put the lock on GX front, GX back. Move the lock back over to the right. And then pick up the waste yarn. I'm going to put some strippers in. Okay, I am going to increase the stitch size a little bit because I'm going to use the U100E transfer tool, and I think this is just a little tight for the yarn I'm going to use. Okay, let's give it a few rows. On N, N. Oh, I had to figure out a better light situation. So I've done a few rows of waste yarn. If you're not gonna, use the Trico Fit or something like that, go ahead and do some more just to ensure it's not going to unravel. So I am going to put the lock on GX, front and back, take the eyelet out, take the strippers out, move the lock to the left so that I will have access to it. So I'll have access to the work, that is. Move the edge springs out of the way. Racking handle at 9 o'clock. Bring the needles up into work that we're going to move the work to. Verify that they're going to hit correctly. or rather not hit. E100E, setting 3. Put it down to the left of the work. And I'm having just a little difficulty around here somewhere. It likes to snag. So I'm just going to make sure, I'm just going to open up all these in case somehow these aren't opening. I think I have, one of these needles is causing a fault somewhere. So if I don't successfully transfer it all, it doesn't really matter because it's just the waste yarn. Okay, so crossing fingers. We'll see if it works this time. Oh, it snagged there. So it's pushed up a needle to the side. It's popped up a needle. Okay, so okay, that one got transferred. So these transferred successfully. This one and this one. Those transferred successfully. This one transferred successfully. This one and this one didn't finish. So I'm going to try just those two and see if it works. Successful. Transfer tool off. Okay, and now the Trico Fit. Now it's kind of hard to remember the settings on this, you know, where the levers go, at what time, what's the purpose. So if you just understand that this side either does not push the needles up or does push the needles up before the Trico Fit reaches it, and then this side either pushes the needles down or leaves the needles up after the Trico Fit gets to it. So we start with both of them in the down position. Get your yarn, feed it underneath the comb, put it in the eyelet holder, and it's going to go, the yarn's going to go under the decker needle like that. So it unknit that one. I'm just going to reknit it, it doesn't matter. And I'm going to pull up the needle two stitches away and wrap it around it. I'm going to come back down with this lined up. I'm going to come back to put the decker needle above the empty needle, lock it in place. Now I want the needles to be pushed up to be knit, and I want on the right side, right now I want them to be, the needles to come back down, so the work to come off the needles. So I'm just going to start turning. Okay, once you see that you only have a few needles left, either you use the counter or you can visually see that you have a few needles left. Complete one last rotation, so they line up again, and then hit the lever on the right up. So that's going to keep the needles up and not down and push the work off the needles. So then just finish it off. Take the Trico Fit off the bed. Take the yarn and eyelet out of the Trico Fit. Cut a small tail and hold the rest of the yarn, so cut on that side. Resecure the yarn. So I'm holding it at all times. Okay, then manually knit one more time on the last needle, and then pull the yarn all the way through. Okay, and then you should be able to just take the work off of the last few needles. Okay, there we go. So it's going to go like this. This is going to be the neck edge, and there's the little here's the little triangle. And then this is going to get grafted onto the neckline. So we do this one more time, identical. Okay. So I did the Trico Fit so I don't have to worry about that unraveling and having to pick up stitches. So it's all secure when I'm going to do that handwork. It's all good. Okay, so we're going to set that aside. Okay, and repeat. Okay, now I'll be doing the ribbing for the arm opening. It is 1-to-1 rib for 66 stitches. So left 33, right 33 if you want to center your work. That's going to be the cast on, and then 5 rows after completing the cast on. Then put it on some waste yarn and either bind it off with a Trico Fit, or don't if you don't have it, and just do extra waste rows to help prevent the work from unraveling. Okay, let's get started. Okay, left 33, right 33. So on the right, it will actually be 32 on the front bed. So I always start on the left with my number, so I know I want when it's even. So I want it to be 33 on each side. So I start with a 33 on the left, and I know it's going to be one less on the right side because that needle is going to be on the back bed. So 33 to 32, and then the 33rd is just going to be directly on the back bed there. Okay, and bring up the needles in between on the back bed into work. I already happen to have them in work. And this is even, so needle rule, rightmost on the back bed and leftmost on the front bed. And I'm putting my edge springs back on. Okay, my lock, I have left it on the left. I'm going to bring it back to the right. And I am also not going to use strippers here. I'm going to use a cast on comb because I'm going to finish off with the Trico Fit. And the Trico Fit pushes it up, pushes the work up, and without this little weight or this little straightener of the comb, the work just tends to bump up because it's so small. There's nothing holding it back down. There's no stripper to push the work back down. So I'll be using the cast on comb, and so it's N, and no strippers, stitch size 2. Okay, pick up the yarn. One row. Bring up the cast on comb. Feed the wire through. CX. So again, I don't look at the settings in the back lock. I know C is the third notch from the start, so I reset it to the start and just go B, C. And then on X, and then stitch size 3.5, so just 6 more notches. Two rows. NN, 4.5. One to complete the cast on, and then 5 more rows. Now I'm going to cut the yarn and leave about 3 times the length of the work for the graft, and just a little extra for good measure. Snip it under the eyelet, keep a hold of it, feed the work back down between the beds, feed the yarn between the beds, and resecure. I'm taking off the previous securing from that same yarn and putting it on. Okay, in this tail, I move it to the left, move lock to GX, and again, I don't look at the lock. I twist it all the way to the end, which is on the back bed H, and I know G is the one right before it, so I just snip it one back. And on X. Okay, and I'm going to pick up my waist yarn. I'm going to do NN. I am going to put the strippers in now, because cast on comb is plenty far down. I am going to use the U100E, and this yarn likes the stitch size to be a little bigger, so I'm going to do 4 more. That was 4 more notches on the stitch size. Okay, so NN. Let's give it a good few rows. Okay, GX. Take the eyelet out, take the strippers out, move it to the left. Move the edge springs away. Bring the needles into work that I'm going to move it to. And so about 9 o'clock, check how they're going to touch. U100E on my favorite setting, number 3. Snap it into the left of the work. And a good pull to the side. Try to do consistent. I'm having a little jam on one of these needles. I haven't figured out yet why. Maybe the bed, maybe it's a channel or something. Yeah, I'll have to figure that out. But it's snagging somewhere. Always around the same place, like right around here. Okay, so let's see. Oh, there we go. Got it. Woohoo! High five. Okay, Trico Fit time. Eyelet, feed it under the comb. Around the decker needle, through the eyelet spacing. Wrap it around. Notches down. Empty space. It should say right in between. It's not going in between yet. Okay, there we go. It wants to fiddle. It doesn't want to go in that one. Maybe a needle's up too high. Okay. There we go. Okay. And this lever pushes the needles before it up. And there is no pusher, so the yarn likes to pop up the needle. and won't come off the work properly if you don't have something, for such small work, if you don't have something down below like the cast on comb. Okay, and we're just going to start turning. Okay, and before all the needles have been knit, I notched the rightmost up so that we'll keep the needles up after they've been chain stitched. Okay, take the yarn out of the Trico Fit off the bed. Snip the yarn just a few inches. Eyelet back in. Feed the yarn back down through, holding it the whole time because I didn't take the tension off. And then secure the yarn. Okay, and on this side, manually knit the last stitch again and pull that yarn all the way through. Okay, and now you've closed off the chain stitch. So you take the first needle off and you take these last few needles off. There you go. So this is the armhole one. So you just do an identical one for the other arm. Okay. Take it off and keep going.